Hello everybody, today we are going to discuss the 20th chapter of The Invisible Man, that is At the House in Great Portland Street. In the last chapter we discussed that how he shared certain first principles with Dr. Kemp, that what he had been doing or how he made himself invisible and how it is sane and credible, how it is possible. He told all that, or he narrated all those things to Dr. Kemp. And here, listening to all that, Dr. Kemp sat silent for some moment and then struck by an idea he started. He said, Griffin, you're all tired and you're standing here while I'm sitting here. No, you should. He just took him by the hand and seated him there. He said, you sit here and I'll stand. And the reason behind that was he didn't want him to see through the window outside, because if he would see outside, he would come to know the policemen who were about to come, because he had already informed Colonel Adai about his being present in his house, and so they would be coming any moment, and he didn't want him to know that, because his plan would all be failed if he would notice that. So he seated him there and then continued with the discussion. They conversed about the things, and he said, that I went to the funeral, I went to attend the funeral, and my mind was still absorbed in my experiments and all things, and I didn't raise a finger to save my father's character, though he could, but he didn't do anything. He simply went and attended. One of his father's old friend was there who read the things and attended the funeral, and the cant who did all that. So he stood there, and later on he moved. He walked through that place which had been a village and now a bit changed. Now we can say there were rubbles and things of construction and all was getting transformed into a town. So he walked through all those familiar places, but he was not at all interested in watching and looking at those things, though it had been his place for a long time. He lived there, he was born there, but he now was not at all interested in all those things. And then he saw a girl whom he knew for about 10 years, but he perhaps didn't want to talk to her as well. Okay. So he was that much, the narrator is trying to say that he was that much involved in his experiments that nothing mattered to him. Even his father's death not at all affected him. He thought of him as only like a foolish person, a sentimental fool, a victim of his own sentimentality. He thought of him just like that, and then he again came to he had already left Chelseastow. Now he came to London, and there he had rented a room in a very poor quarters, or in a very poor corners of London, that was Great Portland Street. So there he had got a room. It was quite a slum area, and it was a big room. There he bought all the apparatus and set them, arranged them there, and he started his experiments. And my first he had to find out how to bring the refractive index very closer or equal to one another, the two things that he had been experimenting upon. So how was that to be done? And then he said, my first experiment was with a wool fabric, he said. And when he did that, it vanished. in a flicker it vanished. Okay. And I was quite astonished to see it just like going, vanishing like a fume, or just a wisp of something. It was like that. And I touched, I found it, and yes, it was there as solid as ever. Then I took it and threw it down, and I had some difficulty to find it again. I was very happy to think of all that, that yes, finally I hit upon that and the experiment worked, it was successful. And then the other thing happened. I heard the meowing, I heard the sound of a cat outside the window. And then something struck my mind, and I said, everything is ready for you. I went and opened the window and let the cat come in. And then I gave the cat some milk. It drank the milk. I gave her some food as well. The cat went round my room, and then I made it comfortable on my truckle bed. Truckle bed is simply a bed with a wheel that can be pushed under some large bed. So made it comfortable in the on the pillow in the truckle bed. And finally then before processing, I gave her some butter to get her wash her stomach, her tummy. And after that, you processed her? Yes, I processed her. And then, the cat, I gave her some opium as well. I gave her some opium, yes. So in that under the effect of that opium, the cat lay for some time. I could see it all vanish. Everything was vanished. But yes, I failed in two things. Two things, yes. One, the clothes, and the other, tapetum, the pigment behind the cat's eyes. So these two things were still visible, that didn't vanish. I couldn't understand why, I couldn't explain why it was so, but yes, the cat was otherwise invisible, but the clothes and the pigment behind in the eyes, that was still visible. And then later the cat woke up, roused, and it started just crying and meowing and walking all around. And I tried to calm her down, I tried to talk to her, but it was of no use. And then I heard some knocking at the door. There was an old woman downstairs, and she was always doubtful, suspected me of vivisection. She was always thinking that I was engaged in some sort of vivisection. You know what is vivisection? So she always suspected me of being engaged in vivisection. Vivisection is experimenting on live animals, and vivisection was illegal there. The laws against vivisection were quite severe, and it would make him, the landlord, liable, though the landlord was a respectable person in the in that muggy and murky neighborhood, in that disrespectful neighborhood. He was a respectable man, so it could bring disrepute to his name, it could defame him. And she was suspected, she was doubtful about that I was engaged in such things. So before opening the door, I gave chloroform to the cat and made it unconscious. And then I went and opened the door. The old lady said, I heard the cat, my cat, is there my cat? So he said, no, okay, no cat, nothing, you can see. And she tried to look over his shoulders. There she peeped and peeked, and she could find nothing, just the truckle bed and empty walls and nothings. And finally she went satisfied. She had to be satisfied because she couldn't find anything there. And then he he bolted the door again. And now after some time, what happened that when the cat came to senses, I I it started crying and shouting and meowing again. I tried to calm her down. It was late in the night. Finally, when it didn't, I tried to catch the cat, but it vanished. I couldn't. And then I had no other option. I opened the window and made a bustle, and I hoped the cat must be out of my room. And then I went out into the streets, in the open streets. The sleep was hopeless. I couldn't sleep. And there I found people, and I was thinking of my invisibility, and I was quite happy thinking about that. I came back to my room again, and what, I continued with my experiments and all, and after some time I heard knocking on my door, and this time it was the landlord and the old lady. So he was also quite suspicious and doubtful, because he had heard the sound of cat in the night. He was quite sure about that, and I said, I tried to disprove that. I said there was no cat, nothing, but he was quite sure, and he said, what are you doing? Why? He was trying to peep into my room over my shoulders, but I didn't allow. He tried to edge me away and then move into my room, but I checked him. I was afraid that he could take away some of my secrets. He became more curious, and he asked that what I was doing and why I was always alone or so secretive, what I had been engaged in. He wanted to know all that. And later I lost control, I lost my temper, and I caught him by the collar. Something ripped, and I pushed him out of my room, and he went spinning away, of course, into the gallery, into the passage. And quite obviously he was very much angry. He muttered something outside, but I disregarded that. I closed the door, and now I was sure that something would happen. I didn't know what he could do, or what power, what authorities he had to do to me. But yes, one thing I was sure, that now my days could be counted there, because I had behaved so badly with the owner of the house there, and so he would definitely remove me. Something like eviction notice or something like that would be there. So now my mind was running riots. I then thought of sending or dispatching my books and other things to some safe place where I could recollect them again. And moreover, I knew that now I had to shift the place, and it would only mean delay in my experiments, and I didn't have money except 20 pounds, and that too in my bank account. So finally I took my book and the checkbook and went to a nearest post office and parceled that to a safe place, a nearby place where I could recollect those things again, and came back. Now the landlord was going upstairs, but I crossed him and passed him and got into my room. And after going there, I worked and processed myself. And when he came to the room and knocked, I didn't answer for some time. The knocking stopped. After some time he returned and again started knocking. Irritated, though he tried to push something down the door of my room, I got irritated by the knocking, and I went in a fury and opened the door and asked, "Now what?" And when he looked at my hands and then my face, he gave an inarticulated cry, an unclear cry, and leaving that notice and all, he just ran away from there. I couldn't understand. I came inside the room and looked into the mirror, and I saw, yes, that my face was white like a stone, cloudy, almost in the process of getting invisible. My hands were all glassy. So, and then I lay there. It was quite painful, and I understood that why the cat was crying and meowing like that. Yes, the process was really very painful. I lay there. I was very much tired. I took a dose of strychnine as well, and I felt that I was becoming all unsympathetic, apathetic, and I appreciated all that. I didn't care for anything. I only thought of myself and my invisibility. And 4 years I had done all this now, and 4 years of regular work had drained me out of my energy, and I was all tired. So I took that dose of strychnine and lay there. The strychnine was really a very strong poisonous sort of drugs, and Dr. Kemp say disparaged of that, but disapproved of that. But now what? Nothing could be done. And he went on telling him, yes, I lay there, and finally what I moreover he disconnected some settings of the apparatus so that nobody could understand. Even when he is not there, he smashed and broke some things as well, and he scattered some paper and tried to burn them, but actually he didn't get any match box there. So now he was lying there, and again he heard some knocking sound on the door. Now this time it was the landlord, and along with him there were some two more voices, and they were the stepsons, because of course he was afraid coming alone. So this time he had brought two stepsons along with him, and then they knocked. The knocking continued. He only responded so that to get more time to do the things for him, to prepare his escape. And then he opened the blinds of a window and went to the other side of that window and sat there. When the door was not open, finally they broke a panel, and then the door was opened and they came inside. And the landlord was sure that he was a vivisectionist, he said so, but the children were not. They said they pointed to the dynamo there, the radiators there, and they thought that he must be an electrician. And they searched, and it was a kind of surprise to them that they didn't find anybody there. They searched all over. Even the younger one went to the window and looked out, and it was just 1 feet distance between the stranger, the invisible man, and the boy, and he just doubled. He folded his fist like this and wanted to hit him, but then he controlled himself, and all of them left the room confused, not knowing where he went. They thought perhaps he might have gone out of that window, and then they moved out of that room, went downstairs. He stayed there for some time, and then he smashed some more things. They, listening to that sound, they come again upstairs, and he slowly, quietly moved down, sat there in the sitting room for some time, waiting for them to come back. And then there he got a matchbox. When they returned, he went upstairs again and fired the room. Kemp said, you set the room afire. He said, don't worry, it must be insured. But of course I had to hide the trail of my work. I didn't want to, because if anybody would see, any well-educated person would come and see all that, definitely he could get something out of that. So I didn't want to leave any trail of my work, and so I set the room afire. And then I escaped. I went out of that house, and I could see the smoke coming out of that room. So this is what the invisible man explains, what he did at the house in Great Portland Street, how he destroyed the apparatus and the other things. He set the room afire. Moreover, how he made the woolen fabric invisible and the cat then invisible. So about the cat, Dr. Kemp asked that is it still alive? So if it has not been killed, then it would be alive. And after 4 days, it was alive. I saw people crowded and trying to find where the sound was coming from. So if it had not been killed, it would be alive, but otherwise, and it was sure that it could have been killed. So these were the things, that how he made himself invisible, the cat and the woolen fabric, and how it was all successful, and very successfully he came out of that house, parceled his books and checkbook to a safe place from where he could recollect. So all these things happened in this 20th chapter. So what happened next after this house in Great Portland Street, where he went? To know more about that, continue watching. So till then, thank you. Bye bye.